from Jericho, and it was it was interesting. I think it was found in '96, I think, from a friend of mine actually named Aubrey. I can't remember his last name, but he worked on our digs with us, but that was actually before we actually started doing our dig, our definitive dig, starting in 2002.
When you say our dig, who are you doing that with?
Dr. Randall Price is the archaeologist, and Dr. Oren Gutfeld is the Israeli archaeologist. We have an American archaeologist and actually two Israeli archaeologists, another gentleman named Yaakov Kalman. And and we have at least 3 universities working with us, and some other organizations, and it's an ongoing dig, and it's very fascinating.
That is very interesting. In fact, I'm planning to take a trip to Israel, and I want you to tell me
I'll hook you up.
what to do, where to go. And I would love to visit that archaeological dig. Can people come and visit?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, in fact, if someone wanted to work on an archaeological dig, you can always volunteer. For our site, we usually approve of folks that work with us, but if you wanted to dig with us, I'll bet I could get you on.
Oh, all right. I've been on archaeological digs, and it's fascinating.
That's right. You have experience in Egypt.
Yes, I did. I was on an all-women's archaeological expedition in Egypt back in the 80s.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm very interested in ancient cultures, and you are too, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating. I mean, there's nothing, I think, more romantic than feeling a tactile connection to these ancient people.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I had an olfactory connection. I think I may have mentioned to you
No,
that
you didn't tell me about that.
We found a wine jug about this big with handles and a lid, sealed for 2,000 years. And the Bedouin Arab, friend of mine named Yusuf, he comes over and he lifts the lid and he goes, Arik, come over here. and he lifts the lid up and he goes, smell it. I'm like, smell it? And so I leaned over and I smelled it, and it was sweet.
Well.
And I'm thinking, what is this? And he at the time we thought it was date honey, but it turned out to be wine. We did some spectral analysis on it, and I talked to the scientist who did all this. In fact, he said, Rick, I can tell where the sculptor or the gentleman who made this, or person who made this, sat down to make this pot by the clay signature. But to have an olfactory connection to something that old,
it's something that goes
doesn't hook
through
you,
time.
Yeah,
that's really amazing.
If that doesn't hook you in archaeology, I don't know what would.
Well, in fact, scientifically speaking, the olfactory is the strongest sense for memory. So
wow.
As when you walk into your junior high school, the first thing that hits you is the smell, right? You remember.
Yeah, the sense memory, right?
The smell is first, and then that triggers other memories. So
cool.
That's very interesting, isn't it?
That is really, that's a wow.
So what inspired you to go on an archaeological dig?
Well, I'd always been interested and fascinated by the Dead Sea Scrolls for some reason, which also inspired my interest in learning Hebrew. But a gentleman named, Dr. Randall Price, he wrote a book called, several books, but one of them called The Secrets from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
I've seen that book. Yes.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books. And,
Yes.
and I thought, and I found out that right after 9/11, there was going to be a tour to Israel. And I thought, oh, I've got to be on this tour. I want to meet all these people. There were a few other authors that I wanted to meet. And so I was excited. I was stoked. So I took the trip. And Dr. Price and I and his wife Beverly became very good friends, and he invited me on the dig that summer.
Wonderful.
And from then on, I always bring my guitar with me, and so.
Oh, so you sang in these?
Yeah!
Places.
Oh my
Isn't
gosh!
that
Yeah, I
wonderful?
bring my guitar all over the world.
Wow,
and,
that's a wonderful thing to do. Well, sound is so important in all this too.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
I was just in France. I went on what was called a Grail quest with a woman who's a harpist and a singer, and we went to all the ancient sites. Where Mary Magdalene had lived and taught, and and a lot of the other the people who had come to France from escaping from the Holy Land, and these places are very powerful. And just hearing the sound in those places was so powerful. It would just resonate with something that was in that place, and create this amazing sort of experience.
Wow. That sounds fascinating.
So, yes, you should do more of that.
I would love to.
And in fact, I should introduce you to that friend of mine, Annie Williams, who is a very well-known harpist and singer.
Oh my goodness, I would love that.
She actually makes recordings in these ancient sites, and
Really?
there is something that kind of comes in, you know,
Well, we could
like
do some
another
concerts together.
aspect, you know, an angelic presence or something comes in to the music. It's quite amazing.
Wow. Well, music is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
We probably told you about that beautiful poem that Rilke wrote to music.
Mm-hmm.
Poetry to me is well, it has a way of expressing the inexpressible. You know.
Well, John Denver's music was poetry, and your music is
absolutely.
poetry. You've written music yourself.
I have indeed.
And in fact, I've heard you recite poetry in Hebrew, in English. I've heard you sing in both languages. Could you do something for us, maybe in Hebrew?
Sure, absolutely. The Lord's Prayer, I think, is the most, well, it's one of my favorite things, along with many of the Tehillim or the Psalms. Avinu Sheba Shemayim Yikdash Mecha Tavo Melchutecha Ya'aseh Retzonaka Ba'aretz Kashenasa B'Shemayim Tin Lanu Hayom Lechem Ukenu Usalach Lanu Et Ashmetenu Kasher Salihim Anachnu Lashar Shmalenu Va'al Tivienu Lidei Masah Ki im Hatzulenu Min Hara Ki Lecha Hamamlecha V'Hagavara V'Hateferet Leolamei Olamim Amen.
Beautiful.
It has a sound.
There's
to it,
something
a
about,
resonance.
especially with these biblical sort of texts and so on, if they're recited in the language that they were written in, they have so much more meaning. There's a vibration there.
Absolutely.
You know, it's interesting.
Do you know what C.S. Lewis used to say? He used to say that one should read old books to let the breezes of the centuries blow through your mind. But I think with an ancient language, I think it's even more. You know, it's almost like a sikha, a conversation with the ancient language, and it's very beautiful.
It's kind of what you said about the smell, you know, about smelling that smell, and it kind of brings that forward to you. It just brings it right into the present, and the ancient language does also.
Wow. That's true. You say it so. It's so much fun. I always enjoy it.
I'm very interested in all this. So I mean, you know, having this connection with you is great. I've so much enjoyed our conversation. And
I do too.
I think you're just amazing. You're just brilliant.
I feel the same way about you, Patricia.
Thank you so much. Maybe you could tell us just a little bit more about yourself in general.
Sure.
What are your plans? What are your goals? I know you kind of ended up doing this music thing indirectly. You really wanted to have a career in the computer world.
Well, I had one for many years, and I was out of work for about, well, I guess about a year and a half. I was looking for work, and it's the first time in my life, because my specialty in CICS is a very high-end kind of high-tech thing, and all of a sudden the economy fell apart. I lost the contract, finished the contract that I had for 12 years with a company, and then I had about 4 months off, and then I took another contract with another company for about 8 months, and they outsourced everything to India.
Oh my!
And so, so after that, I had nothing for gosh, about a year and a half. So I took up surfing, stand-up paddle surfing, and I got to where I really enjoy that. And then all of a sudden, I had two companies that basically fell through. With offers, and I had nothing left to do, and I thought, well, I can always sing, and so I took a trip to Aspen. I found out there was a 13th annual tribute to John.
Yes, we do have an annual tribute that people come to from all over the world.
Yeah, and I took a last-minute flight because I thought, oh my gosh, well, this is something I've never pursued. And I thought, well, I should try this. You know, I should at least go. And I had no expectations. And I showed up, and I basically, I got to the hotel. I took a last-minute flight to Aspen, and I set my guitar down at the Limelight Lodge, and I set it down, and I was signing in, and this guy just walked off with my guitar, and I'm like, what's going on? And I looked over at him, and I thought, well, maybe he's a musician. Maybe he wants to play my guitar, because a lot of John Denver's musicians were there, you know, for the thing. And then the guy comes back, and he goes, are you going to just let me take your guitar? And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, I'm Jim
He was
Connor.
testing you. Oh,
I wrote
Jim
Grandma's
Connor.
Feather Bed. I'm like, that's my grandma's favorite song. He goes, that's my grandma's favorite song. And we're like talking about this, and he took me over to meet everybody, and everybody was like, where have you been, man? You know, I'm like, I don't know, you know, so you know, everybody kind of, they just kind of took me in like a family. And I had so many experiences throughout that weekend, and I came back home, and I was having sushi with one of my surfing buddies, Steve Bridges, who's a famous comedian friend of mine. He's on the Tonight Show all the time, and I was telling him all these stories, and he's looking at me like this, and he's getting excited. I mean, I had lots of interaction with lots of very interesting stories, and he slaps the table and goes, "That's it, Rick. My manager, Randy's really good at this, and we're going to do this." And the next thing you know, about 2 weeks later, I was in Vegas, Las Vegas, on a guest. I was a guest on a show, and I did an audition. I sang Annie's song, and they're all like, "Whoa!" You know, from then on, they had me on the show every day.
Oh, wonderful.
And then after that show finished, then I came back to LA, and I did my first show of John's songs on January 30th of this year.
That is not very long ago.
No, it's not.
Amazing. It's just amazing, you know, in fact, how things have kind of mushroomed for you here in Aspen. You've been invited everywhere. You're performing all over parties and
I've been singing a
events and picnics, and I see you every day, actually. Wherever I go, there you are.
Well, it's a lot of fun. I mean, these songs they're connected deeply to my childhood and to my family. I did some television and radio. I could tell endless stories about all of this when I was in my teenage years, and it was a lot of fun. And honestly, these songs just have such deep resonance to me personally, and I think of my family in Louisiana and my mom and all of my friends. You know, it's a deeply connected thing.
Well, there's a theory, it's called a doppelganger, you know, that each of us have a double somewhere.
Oh.
And I think you are the doppelganger of John Denver. You are like
well,
the spitting image in every kind of way. But again, as I said, you are also your unique self, but in a similar kind of way to John and the things that he did and was interested in.
Well, that's an honor. Thank you.
You mentioned Annie's song, and it's always everyone's favorite song, I think. Oh, so many favorite songs from that time. But Annie's song is one that is so meaningful to a lot of people. Would you sing that for us?
Absolutely. Well, I think Annie's song is like a hymn.
It
is. It's just, I think, the prettiest song that, well, I just think it's one of the most beautiful songs ever written. And I love this song. You fill up my senses like a night in a forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me again. Come, let me love you, let me give my life to you. Let me drown in your laughter, let me lie in your arms. Let me lay down beside you. Let me always be with you. Come, let me love you. Come, love me again.